Welcome to episode 5 of season 1 of the Kyero Pro Podcast, the podcast for estate agents in Spain. I'm joined by Tom Bayley, Sean Woolley, and Alfredo Bloy-Dawson today.
Yeah, I'm the managing director of Cloud9 Spain. We are a real estate company. We've been established on the Costa del Sol and the Costa Cálida and Costa Blanca South for about 24, 25 years.
Yes, I'm Tom Bayley, owner of Project Bayley, a lead generation agency here on the Costa del Sol, mostly focusing on generating leads.
And Alfredo, do a little piece.
Marketing consultant in the Costa del Sol, work mostly with real estate agencies and people in the real estate space, and I've been doing it since 2012.
In this episode, we are talking about paid media, predominantly on Google. Last week, we spoke about SEO, and the week before that, about generating leads from portals. So hopefully this will round out the picture nicely. And this is for agents who are either thinking about getting into paid media or have some experience with it and discovered the wrinkles. So to kick us off, let's imagine a scenario where we're searching on Google for a search term that we think we should be showing up for as an agency. And now we'll see the Gemini section first of all. And underneath that is the paid media. And there are our competitors, possibly outbidding us, possibly ranking above us. And as an agency, I'm saying to myself, are they succeeding or are they just blowing money? Are they getting value for that advertising slot, or do they just have a bigger budget than me? Alfredo, perhaps you could introduce the sort of set the scene a bit more by telling us what Google Ads are, what it's about, and in terms of the basics, what makes it a good or a bad fit for an agent?
Sure. I mean, in very basic terms, a lot of people refer to PPC, pay-per-click advertising, which is confusing for real estate agents because it also means private purchase contract. But Google Ads is as it sounds, and as people may guess, is where people search for stuff and they see ads at the top of it. So it's generally keyword-based. It also has a display side, which is where you have ads in people's websites that you see that has the little Google Ads symbol in the corner. So it's essentially a way of paying for people to see your ads, and then it clicks through to a landing page or a website typically, and you can generate leads. That's generally how it's used in real estate.
Cool, thanks. And as maybe a new agent to the world of lead gen, how can I tell whether it's something I should be looking at or not? Is there a quick heuristic?
I mean, if you're looking for leads and you don't have listings, it's one of your main, if not only, ways of getting leads. So if you don't have any listings, which could go in a portal, you're kind of generally going to go that way. If you're looking at generating leads, for example, for off-plan projects, again, Google Ads tends to be the go-to for that, at least here on the coast. Really, if you need leads and you're not getting enough, it's one of the few levers that you can pull. Everything else can generate leads, but tend to be a little bit more of the long game or more of a brand game or more of a demand gen and that kind of stuff. So what happens at the moment is that if you have listings and the portals aren't generating as many leads as you'd want them to or as you need, you might have a little dabble in Google Ads. And that's where hopefully Tom and Sean can tell us what the mindset should be for that, because it's quite you got to have quite a strong, steady pulse for Google Ads, and so it's not for everybody. Everybody could benefit from it, but not everybody's quite set up for it or really understand what the numbers are like. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, thanks. So Tom, over to you. When an agent or an agency approaches you to handle the paid media side of their business, what kind of preconceptions have they come with, or what mistakes have they already made? What do you see as a theme there?
So I think the primary one is that Google Ads, as I think Alfredo just mentioned, is a bit of a numbers game. It's it's not a switch you can just flick. If you don't have enough volume, you can't really learn, you can't optimize, and you really can't judge it fairly. So I'll give you a real example. Let's say a lead, you're paying 50 euros per lead and you're spending 50 euros a day. We're talking on average a lead per day. I think in one of the previous episodes of the podcast, Alfredo, you mentioned that the average conversion rate from lead to sale is around 1% on the Costa del Sol for Google leads. So that means that we're talking 100 leads to generate a sale. At 50 euros a day, we're talking then 100 days of running that that campaigns, where we're talking consistent spend, consistent process to produce an outcome they can actually judge. So at the end of the day, you're kind of not essentially buying leads, but you're kind of buying data and probability. A couple of things I always have to explain is budget actually doesn't scale linearly. One question I always get is if I double my budget, can I double my leads? Technically, yes, but it isn't overnight. As you shift or make big changes to the campaign, it does go into like a bit of a relearning phase where the algorithm, and in this case, now AI, has to adjust what they'd already learnt from the conversions and the data that the campaign has been generating, and it kind of moves from there. It's just normal. You can get more leads, but it doesn't happen overnight. Another one is that testing needs power. What a lot of agents do is often split their budget on too many campaigns, too many landing pages, and all that does is it drags out the timeline and ends up producing weak conclusions. We much rather see one solid campaign, one solid landing page, hit volume first, and then you can branch out and try to get consistency from there. Another one that always pops up is lead quality. Lead quality, I think, is half marketing and half follow-up. So, obviously speed to lead is important. Making sure that you're answering their initial inquiry is important as well. A lot of times people blame bad leads when the actual issue is, a slow response or a weak qualification on that side. One our friend has just mentioned as well is the difference between resales and new developments. So here, you need different strategies. You need different strategies for both, because one thing that we have to explain as well is that most of the keywords that have search volume are generic searches. So say, for example, apartments for sale in Marbella. It's quite a generic, specific in some cases because it's selected, you're saying area, you're saying property type, you're saying that it's for sale, so you're indicating purchase intent or interest. But if we then, you see a lot of agencies then sending them to just one resale. Now, a lot of the times it's gonna fall off because it doesn't match their criteria. So the landing page needs to also match the initial search. So if it's kind of broad in some sense, you need to send them to options. A big one is Google versus Meta. It always pops up, where should I spend my money? Google captures demand, Meta creates it. Both can work. You can generate buyers in both, but you shouldn't expect the same behavior, or the same conversion rate from both of those channels. And just on a final note on this as well is tracking has to be right as well. Calls, WhatsApps, people coming back to your website or landing page, or even coming into the office can often make attribution messy. So you kind of need to have a simple, but correct, obviously, measurement plan. Otherwise, at the end of the day, you're going to make wrong decisions.
Wow, there's so much there to unpick. Thanks, Tom.
Sorry.
Oh, that's cool.
Alfredo gave me permission yesterday to waffle on, so yeah, I tried to control myself, but
Alfredo will just edit all that out. Don't worry about it. But in your example, I'm going to note as just sort of a ballpark example there. You said 50 euros a lead, 1 in 100 conversion. So as an agent, I need to be thinking about spending $5,000 at least to even test my process.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the other thing to throw into the mix as well is the time between, getting that lead, nurturing that lead, and making a sale. If we're talking, it changes between agencies depending on which market they're targeting. But if we say on average it's between 3 and 6 months, it means that the leads, if you generate 100 leads in month 1, that's going to be the sale in the next 3 to 6 months. So again, it's all about understanding the numbers, understanding what is the process that the leads go through, and then obviously working and understanding that then once the lead is handed over, let's say, it's down to you to then try and convert that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure we'll come back and touch on some of those points. Sean, you've been using paid media as your main strategy, I think, for however long, and you're in arguably one of the most competitive markets in the whole of Spain. What's your take on all this, and what have Tom and Alfredo said that you maybe agree with or disagree with?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with most of it. The interesting thing is, it used to be so easy, didn't it, guys? It used to be 24 years ago when I started, I think we just about had the internet. And I remember being in my second bedroom in my first property in Spain. I think we were still on dial-up or something. It was very wonky. But in those days, you could write some content for a website, and you knew that the next day or the day after you'd be number one on Google. And it was SEO as it used to be, because there was very little competition. And I remember we kind of relied on that. We also relied on a lead generating portal at that time, and everything was fine. And then one guy I was working with said, Sean, you're going to have to start paying for leads. And I was like, how dare you? It was like blasphemy. I couldn't believe this guy was saying I actually have to hand over money to get these leads. And sure enough, I was probably slightly behind the curve at the start, and I tried to do it all myself, and it's a dark art, I think, because it relies on so many variables. I mean, first of all, just in terms of the commercial practicalities, as a company, because of the numbers involved now, you need balls of steel, excuse my French. You need cash flow, because effectively you might go 6 months without a deal. So you've got to work out, okay, how much do I need to spend between 5,000 and 10,000 euros a month to have a decent crack at this? So that's, say, 60,000 that you need straight away. And that's hopefully because you can convert one of these things into a sale. Then you've got your staff costs, your business costs. So if you're a new agency, you're talking about a 6-figure sum to really even be in a position to compete with the existing players. But I think the interesting thing is you've also got to have the follow-up in place. There's no point getting leads. There's no point getting 100 leads a month and doing nothing with them. It's just, you're lead farming for vanity's sake. And that comes down to obviously the resources that you have at the, in-house in terms of how you're communicating with your leads. And that's changed. I mean, that's probably another podcast episode altogether about how clients now like to be contacted and their method of communication. But also the quality of leads. It's all about the quality, isn't it? There's no point getting 100 bad leads. What you want is 10 or 20 of those leads to be really good ones that you can convert and maybe get 2 or 3 across the line. And that depends, I think, on where those leads come into the funnel. So, if you're trying to get them at the point where they're beginning their search, so they're looking for apartments to buy in Spain on Google, you're going to get leads. You're going to pay for the privilege, but you're going to get leads, but you're also going to get them at the widest part of the funnel where the client doesn't really know where they want to be. They just know that they've got this idea that they want to be in Spain. So you've got quite a lot of work to do. Might be longer than 6 months. Got quite a lot of work to do to bring them down into a position where they're well qualified. Whereas if you get leads that are well researched and that kind of know where they want to be. I mean, we get some inquiries who say, I want to be in Elviria Hills, Phase 2, Block 7, Entrance 1. And you're like, Jesus, this guy knows the Costa del Sol better than we do. Those leads are sometimes almost too hot because they might well have bought, they might well be staying there now, they might well be sat with a lawyer signing a reservation form. So it's a real balancing act. It's a juggling act. And then, of course, you get the people coming into the market who just want to compete, and they'll throw a load of money at it. But what that does, of course, is it means that everything becomes more expensive for the rest of us because it's a bidding system. So it really is. I mean, what I do, I sit down every Sunday morning and do what I call my Sunday stats. And I look at how much money we've spent, normally with a whiskey next to me just to soften the blow. And I look at the leads that have come in, what we've done with them, where they're coming from, what sort of budgets they're in, they're coming in on. So it's a real overview. And that's the one final thing I would say is that you need someone at the helm who understands how to interpret these figures, because I'm guessing a lot of agencies who work with real estate agents will say, look, I've got you 100 leads this month. It's all going great. Give us your money. there's far, far more to it than that.
Wow, interesting. Interesting to sort of know that to get into the game, you need to be thinking about, say, a 5 or 10K spend a month. You need to go for long enough to get a deal out of it to sort of work the numbers back. Yeah, so it's not something agents can just go, I'll give that a try. It's a strategic choice.
But a lot of agents do. A lot of agents think, and we notice it, when there's a little bit of pressure on in the market, we notice that leads become more expensive. And I think that's because more people come into it to try and buy success. And that's understandable. You think, okay, well, if I throw enough money at something, it's going to work. And we can always see that. There's always either, peaks and troughs of spend. And we're like, Jesus, why are we spending so much? And it's because other people, whether in desperation or because they've been told it's the thing to do, are wanting to enter the market in that way.
There's a thing, another number thing to throw into this, actually, that's quite interesting, is that when demand in the market drops, desperation for leads increases. So you have lower demand, and then people switch over to Google Ads to try and get some more leads, which then saturates the supply of ads, and you almost have like a double whammy effect where there are fewer buyers looking right now, and there are double the amount of agents doing Google Ads for it. So it's not even double the cost; it's a 4x cost. So it's like very low volume, very high price, and if you try and push for price, so push for volume at that stage, it just exponentially increases the price. So one of the factors, and maybe Tom could correct me on this, but one of the factors I've always found useful for an agent is knowing when to just chill out, look at their mailing list and work on that, do some housekeeping whilst it's a bit quiet, because if you push too hard at the wrong time, you just blow in money for the fun of it. You can put all the pressure you want on the person supplying you with the Google Ads lead gen service, but it's an own goal. Or you can do the opposite and force the over-optimize the campaign to try and make it work at the wrong time, and you just kill the campaigns completely. I mean, Sean, how long have you been running your Google Ads campaigns, and how much more or less have you spent, would you say?
I think, the analysis I did in preparation for this meeting was, I think over the last 10 years, just over 10 years, we've spent €500,000. So, it's not an insignificant sum. And the thing about it is, I know the cost of living crisis and all that sort of stuff, but the amounts, the cost per lead has gone up massively. I think when we started, it was less than 10 euros a lead. And that seemed expensive at the time. And now we're multiples of that. And some months you look at it and go, wow, that's a lot of money we've spent. I mean, I suppose the thing that it does give you is it gives you data volume. So even if you don't do anything with those 100 leads a month or however many it is, you've got 100, fresh leads in your database that you can then do something with. And, we do that. We have you can imagine we have an extensive database now. And we, when times are hard, as in, the cost per lead goes through the roof, which it sometimes does, at least we can, like Alfredo says, we can keep our powder dry and revert to the asset that we have that isn't costing us any money, and try and market our way through that. But again, you need to be so disciplined as an agency, and you need to be so well set up in terms of that follow-up. There's no point getting an inquiry from Google Ads and sitting on it for 5 days and not doing anything with it, because chances are that person has made 4 inquiries with 4 different agents. And I'm not saying it's the first one to contact them wins the business, but it's definitely the first one to have a meaningful business discussion with them that will win the business.
Absolutely. Yeah, just one final note. So I think making emotional decisions and adjusting the campaigns based on that, like our fellow said, kills it.
One of the things that's also worth saying is a lot of agents come to a bit like the SEO conversation we had last week, Martin. Who you pick to do your Google Ads does not guarantee success, but picking the wrong one guarantees failure, right? So that's the first stepping stone. The same thing with an SEO service or picking a property portal. So there's a common thread that goes through it. Stage 1, can it work, right? So you pick somebody that has got a current track record, because we're not selling tennis balls here, as we talked about before, right? They need to know this market. And then once you've got someone that has a proven track record, then the next question is, are you right for it? Have you got the stomach for it? What do the numbers look like? And when can you expect a return? And there is one thing that happens that's also counterintuitive. at least from my experience of as a consultant talking to agencies, the normal conversation would be, we're going to start low budget, see how it goes, and if it starts working, endless amount of budget. Two things you need to know about that. Endless amount of budget, starting on the second one, it doesn't scale, as Tom said. So you can't just double budget today and double leads tomorrow. You can work towards it, but it doesn't work quite like that. And the other thing is, if you start slow, you're just adding, if Tom said it's one lead a month, one lead a day, and there's 100 days to potentially get a sale. And it could be that last lead that becomes a sale. So that could be 3 to 6 months after the 100 days, right? But quite often the agent will come and start tinkering right at the early stage of the process. And you won't even get to that point where you're getting that flow, because there's a huge amount of impatience. Or they'll have this idea of, this is what I would search for. And I think I get this a lot. I used to get this a lot. This is what I would search for. And there's two things that normally that the agent gets to have. You have to politely kind of help them through this learning process of how this works. Is just because you search for it doesn't mean anybody else is. So how many people are actually searching for that? Quite often it's like 30 a month, and there's 1,000 agents hitting it. And even if you search for it, can you convert it? So my at this stage of the thing, the flow is the agencies I've worked with that work best with Google Ads are the ones that can take a macro view. So I've worked with Sean for years. Tom and I worked in the same team for years as well. And the difference between Sean and that's been doing this for a decade and another agent that does it for a few months and stops is really the macro view. So he won't prod the person to make changes after 2 quiet days. He won't analyze it after 1 week. He would go insane if he would analyze it after 1 week, because this week cost per lead is €400. So most agents would go, what the hell is going on? It's Wednesday, I haven't had a lead yet, or whatever. And they start forcing the whole thing into almost, it's called optimizing itself to a standstill. That's what I call it, okay? So someone like Sean, who's a good example of a good fit person for this. So you have a Tom that knows what he's doing. So that's tick number 1. Tick number 2 is a Sean who understands it. He'll make decisions based on 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. He's a total zoom out. And he does the same with his own team in terms of their conversion rates. They're what they should be doing. And then the third element to that, which defines a Sean versus a non-good fit, is Sean has intermediary KPIs, meaning he doesn't just go, I've had leads, I haven't had a sale. This is not working. He has numbers of how many should really be being pre-qualified to buy, how many of those are warm and hot, etc. How many of those go to viewings? I mean, talk us through that, Sean, a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, luckily I'm a statistician by heart, so it's great for me because it's all about conversion rates. It becomes a numbers game, which is awful to say when you're dealing in a people business, but it does. It does become a numbers game. And just to give you an example, I know of agents out there, one in particular who only wants leads for La Zagaleta, which is like the best of the best of the best. Villas are average there 10 million euros, and the way he looks at it is, okay, my leads are going to cost me 250 euros. That's for a lead. Okay. And go back to our previous maths of 1% conversion rate. I need 100 leads to get one over the line. That's 25,000 euros. 25,000 euros to get one deal. But his rationale will be, well, if I do that one deal, I'm going to make 150,000 euros. So I'm still 25,000 euros better off. So the numbers do stack up. But can you imagine, like, having spent 25,000 euros and there's no sign of a deal? Ooh, that is squeaky bum time. And a lot of agents do that. And it's fine when the going's great and there's, a post-COVID glut of wealth flying along, and you'll spend whatever. But when the market normalizes, as it is now, are you realistically going to spend 25,000 euros to get 100 leads for La Zagaleta in the hope of converting one of those?
And what happened?
It's a gamble. It's like being at the roulette table, isn't it? It's like, am I red or am I black?
Yeah, that's especially true in the high end.
Like he was saying,
that's especially true in the high end, where you have what example Sean's using, and this happens to portals as well in the high end. You could go for a year without a sale, and your contract runs out December 31st. So December 30th, you get a sale. It's paid for the next 5 years because the ticket price is so high. But what if it doesn't? It's such a binary success-failure equation.
Yeah.
And
it's like, because of the commissions involved in real estate in southern Spain, you can make a good living out of making 2 or 3 deals a year. But my argument has always been, what if you don't? You know, and that's why I think we're seeing a degree of consolidation in the market now where, one-man bands particularly who were in that mid to high end, which is ultra competitive at the moment, are pulling away from the risk and just going, do you know what? I'm going to let somebody else take the financial risk and I'm just going to sit and do and do a sales job and make good commissions, but somebody else has got the cash flow issues and the heat that comes with generating leads.
Yeah, and like you were saying, that 250k a lead, 250 euros a lead, spending 25k a month, maybe you need to pony up 6 months worth before you get a sale. You know, that's serious money.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where you've got to sit down, you've got to work out the numbers, you know, what you're trying to achieve, almost reverse engineer it. What am I hoping to achieve? What are my other costs? How much am I paying my salespeople? How much am I paying for my office? What margin do I need to create? And then it's kind of, okay, but then, you know, beyond that, you've then got to work out, okay, where do I want to compete? What am I competing in? Is it new developments? Is it resales? Is it areas? Is it the whole of Spain? What am I set up to succeed at? And a lot of agents don't know the answer to that question because they've never done it before, or they haven't got the infrastructure in place that's gonna convert leads in a highly competitive environment.
I think the other one as well is Sean, you're seeing that cost per lead volatility in an ad account that has 10 years of data. So you know your Google Ads account, you could say that knows exactly what a conversion is, or what a lead, what you consider a lead is. If we now take that and say, okay, so new agency, new ad account, zero data, and they have to build that up, it means, you know, the initial months or even the initial year, it's cost per lead, it isn't 50, it's 200, and they have to sort of navigate through that as well. That's another one that we're constantly seeing. And so kind of setting expectations is a huge part of, you know, them understanding what the process is, what to expect, but also us keeping them as a client. So
yeah, interesting. Right. This is a question for Tom and Alfredo probably. Do you see agents still trying to DIY pay-per-click, and is that even feasible now? And who picks up the pieces when they stop?
I'll be the short one.
Sorry,
I'll go short. Yeah, it's ridiculous that they would do it themselves. Google makes it very easy for you to do things yourselves, and they'll be you know, if you're doing Google ads, you're an agent, you're gonna have a bash at it yourself. I guarantee you'll be calling me in 2 months' time, going, "Oh, help!" And then I'll be saying, "Go speak to Tom." Save yourself the time. Save yourself the time. Tom, be more elaborate than that.
Yeah, so for mine, it's actually worse, because now with AI, people sort of kind of think that because they're sending either the data to the AI or they've asked the AI to put together a campaign, that they've already become experts. And, you know, AI, the use of AI in this is good, but the response is only ever as good as the prompt. So that, you know, it gets tricky. So we constantly have to either undo or completely scrap a campaign. And we often sound quite negative with some of the ideas that they come across, but we've been doing this for quite a while now, and we've tested, you know, most types of campaigns, most type of outcomes. There's often new ideas that are worth testing. Again, it's all about testing and seeing the results. But a lot of the times, it's you know, you're going to waste your money.
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems like a similar argument to using an SEO agency that's been there, done it, sees it every day, rather than you trying to figure it out from scratch and hope you find some piece of hidden magic.
But it is weird though. It's almost counterintuitive, isn't it? You know, when you see that it, you know, Google does talk you through it and you can do it. Yeah, it's a step-by-step process. And so I think most people think, easy, let's do it. But you know, when you get a quote from an expert like Tom and you think, Jesus, I've got to pay him this a month on top of my ad spend. Hang on a minute, what the heck's going on? But you've got to do it, because you've got to look at two things. You've got to look at the value that person can bring to you in terms of their knowledge and expertise, but also the time that you're going to waste. You know, if my key skill is sales and I'm spending 2 hours a day checking my AdWords account and making, you know, that's 2 hours out of my time a day. You know, what am I worth? And that's when the I think the expenditure on an expert becomes valid and good value.
The biggest. This is going to sound really stupid. Sorry, Tom, but the biggest asset that a good Google Ads expert will bring to the agent is protecting the campaign from being tinkered with. Like having the knowledge to say, hold. You see, now it's working again. That is
because if it was me, I'd be tinkering,
and you end up.
Do you know one of the reasons that is though, Sean? That I sort of think is it's because it's your money. It's much easier for me to not make those decisions because at the end of the day, it's actually your money I'm managing, and that makes that kind of that emotional triggers are removed with that.
And this is where you've got to have balls of steel, because if you're looking at a campaign and you even just one day and you spent, I don't know, 200 euros and you've had absolutely nothing for it, would you just go onto the street and give someone 200 euros of your own money? Would you chase 200 euros down the street in a gale? Yeah, you probably would. But so you look at that and you think, hang on a minute, I've got absolutely nothing back. So you can't look at it in isolation. You do have to take this macro view, because otherwise you would just have a nervous breakdown every morning, which I do anyway.
Did you start doing with a DIY approach? So did you try it yourself to start with?
And I loved it because it's quite analytical. It's statistical. So for me, it's perfect. It's great because that's kind of where my skill set is. I loved it, but it kind of took over my life, and I wasn't sure if I was any good at it. And I was tinkering. I was Tinkerman. So, and Alfredo's great with me because he just says, Sean, don't. And he knows me well enough just to say, what are you doing? And I get excited because like a new development will come online. And you think, great, let's go and get all these leads for this new development that no one's ever heard of course. So no one's searching for it. So, I'm there behind the scenes trying to create a landing page for some new development. And Alfredo's like, what's the point? What is the point in creating a landing page for a development no one's looking for? So, you've got to let the ego go as well, and that's where for me someone like Alfredo is great because he just keeps slapping me on.
Yeah, but that is the service. The service is like protecting the account from you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
I think the point I was trying to make earlier, which I didn't finish making because I got myself down in a rabbit hole, is this idea of starting slowly. Yeah. It makes it's the opposite. It makes sense in anything else, but in this it doesn't really make sense. So going to Tom's example of 50 euros a lead, 50 euros a day, 1 lead a day. If you say, well, I want to start with 200 euros a month budget, for example, that's 4 leads a month. So now you can work out the math. If it's 100 leads to get a sale. Yeah. So you're basically making it harder to find out if this is working. So there's a real fine balance, and based on all the details of what you're trying to do, what your real business is, et cetera, then someone like Tom will be able to say, right, this is what I suggest you start with. And there will be a way to start, because there's 2 things that happen over the years, and I don't know if you echo this, Tom, is there are agencies that come and don't need these leads to survive. So they will wait. They have patience. They're well-funded. And they're more like, in my experience, they're more likely to succeed. The ones that it gets really expensive fast is the ones that come in and say, here's 10 grand. I need leads tomorrow. I don't care how you do it. Spend it. Otherwise, I'm going out of business. You almost feel like saying, well, why don't you just keep the 10 grand, send me like a bottle of whiskey, and get on with your life. You know what I mean? It really feels like that. Like this is just the wrong way around, man. Because for me to push at that speed on a campaign that has no history, you're gonna blow most of it to find out, oh no, this isn't the way to do it. This isn't, your landing page isn't working well. Your follow-up is, the stuff you've chosen to be on the landing page. So there is a fine balance between going too slow, where you'll find out even later, or going too heavy and just it's going to cost you more. You can do it. We had someone a Voodoo, didn't we, Tom, that said we want to blow 50 grand in the next couple of weeks, and I just like, okay, you just turn everything up to the max, and just see what happens. Consequently, you're spending 500 euros a lead.
Yeah. It's quite interesting because I had a conversation with you the other day, Alfredo. Similar mindset. I wanted to get from 0 to 100 very, very quickly, and you just went, whoa, And I was willing to throw a little bit of cash at it, but no, it wasn't going to work. But as a business owner, I want results now. I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait. I don't want other people nicking my market share. I want to go for it. And you were like, Don't do it.
I think the key thing also is those intermediary KPIs, Sean, because you don't need, I mean, let's say it's a new lead source, right? So you do try different lead sources. Right now you're trying several different things, aren't you? And you're always trying new avenues to generate leads. But you don't have to wait for a sale to get a sense whether it's right or wrong, because you have things to you have benchmark figures to compare it against, don't you?
That's right. I mean, it's like this, debate with the meta ads. I mean, we're trialing meta ads at the moment, and we're getting a lot of inquiries, and they're probably half the price of a Google Ads lead, but they're probably twice or three times more difficult to convert because there isn't as much intent. So, it really is. It's spreadsheet city. It's incredible. And also the other thing we haven't mentioned is the quality of landing pages. Where are those inquiries going? And a lot of agents, they think that nice homepage, to land on, that's going to solve everything. And of course, most people who make an inquiry about a specific thing want to be taken to a page with that specific thing on there, and very often they're not. And then it's a question of, okay, do I make this landing page composite? Do I give people a choice of properties or developments? And if so, how many? And that's another art form in itself, depending on what budget level people are looking at. And so there's lots and lots to think about. And I worry, I fear for anyone entering the market now wanting to do Google Ads with no good, genuine experience guidance, because you can burn cash.
Oh God!
There is one thing.
It's so easy to do.
One of the things that's changed since your days of doing it yourself, Sean, to now, is Google Ads. In those days, it was very manual, wasn't it? What's keyword? Oh, that means people are searching for stuff. Okay, well, apartment for sale, Marbella. It was quite a manual process. Over the years, like the last 14 years, it now autopilots by default. So it has all these little automatic settings, which I'm sure work very well when you're selling tennis balls, but this is a house we're talking about. So they're by default on. So you kind of go, oh, here's my keyword. This is, let's say you were doing it yourself. If you did it today, Sean, you go, here's my keywords, apartment for sale, Marbella, and there'll be a little box below that, hidden by a little accordion menu that has a self-ticked box that says, or wherever else we think you should go. Right? So suddenly you get in leads for people looking for, Marbella pasta sauce from the US. And you're like, what? And then you look through it and it's auto-ticked. I didn't choose that. It creates site links automatically for parts of your website. So by default, it's very much this step-by-step process where it's very easy to set it up. And I'm sure it's got some good intentions in there. But really, you have this thing that is like flashing on your screen that's saying, it's called optimization score, right? And they put that in, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. And it's saying, this is how good your campaign are. Like, you're out of 100%, you're at 40. It's poor. You suck, right? And you're like, no. I don't want to do those things that you're suggesting. Like, why don't you, instead of making it kind of match that only people looking for Marbella, why don't you just make it people just looking for anything? And you're like, I don't want to do that. Minus 10% on your optimization score. And you're constantly fighting the ads interface itself, either hiding stuff is doing for you that you didn't know it was doing, or telling you you're terrible at what you're doing and you should click these buttons. And you don't even have to go into what it says. It says something and it says plus 11%, and you go, apply all. You click on that, and boom, is now you're selling to Afghanistan woven baskets, and you didn't know that. And that am I right, Tom?
Oh, we've had a few of those.
Yeah, that's actually spot on. I mean, one of the recommendations that often pops up is if you changed your daily budget on a campaign from €10 to €250 a day, you'd get more conversions, which is always a good one.
It might even say, in a month, you might get
0.1
conversions. You think, wait a minute, I was paying €250.
Yeah. It's I think going back to something you mentioned before, Sean, about the quality of the landing pages and so on. I think for agencies as well, they need to remember that what they're actually paying for in the Google Ads is the click, not the actual lead. So the lead is kind of the outcome of the click. So so I think that's sort of something that they need to sort of remember.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. What's a sort of an average click to lead conversion rate that you work with?
So it varies tremendously. I mean, there's a ton of factors: market, language. On average, you'd potentially see around between a 15 and a 30% click-through rate on an ad. Now, the other thing is as well is that before on campaigns, like Alfredo mentioned, you'd sort of have everything set to manual. But nowadays, you have the option which is maximize conversions, so you can kind of, in a sense, chuck a lot of settings within that campaign, and it will. The goal of that campaign is to generate conversions, so to generate leads. If your conversion is set to a lead, so it will spend more or less depending on where the likeliness of creating that conversion. And I think that's where it's constantly evolving. And one of the other ones as well it's moving into is with now AI. They're now sort of shifting from it's this campaign with these settings and these keywords to, okay, let's take these keywords as a suggestion, as they call them signals. So essentially what you're doing is, or what they're trying to achieve is get you to provide that campaign and Google more signals. Now, the way I kind of explain this is same as AI, you're giving it a prompt. So like I said before, the response is only as ever good as the prompt that you give it. So what you try to do there is improve or give as many signals as possible to Google Ads to improve the outcome, which are the conversions and the leads.
This sort of makes me think about lead quality. The arguments, whatever form of lead gen agents are talking about, is lead quantity, lead quality. Alfredo, what kind of levers do agents have to pull to control those variables, and what are the tips and tricks there?
Lead quality and lead quantity. Yeah, lead quality. It's is have faith in the person doing the lead gen for you. Honestly, I could generate 100 leads tomorrow morning for Sean, and he'd thank me for it and hate me for it in 2 months' time or a month's time. And there is a process that follows, which is not enough leads, pressure onto the person doing the Google ads for you. They start broadening the intent because they start with the obvious. This is what you're selling. This is what people. Let's serve that to people that are looking for it. Turns out there's not enough people looking for it, or there's 1,000 agencies targeting the same thing. So you have to start broadening out, and they start diluting the intent. And so the lead quality for me is 100% connected to the degree of intent of the lead. Meaning, think about it from a very simple basis. If you were looking to buy, you're in a skiing chalet right now, aren't you? If you were looking to buy a ski chalet, you would search for ski chalet for sale or go on a portal that has that. That's your intent. Right now I am looking. And the fact that the action of looking for it triggers something that shows an ad and et cetera, and that's Google ads, right? The other kind of targets where the intent's lower, might be psychographic. You booked a holiday to go skiing, you bought some skis, you like traveling to Zurich Airport or Geneva, and a whole bunch of signals, like Tom says, that suggest that you could be ripe for potentially buying a house. And that can convert. That's what we're talking about meta. But the intent is lower. And it's that balance that Sean was talking about where you have to balance out cost per lead, volume of leads, effort to follow them up, and does the math work out at the end? And the final figure isn't cost per lead, it's cost per sale. So that's the quality. The quality to me is tied to intent. And it's not as easy to go, well, just give me the good ones, the good intent ones, because you might only get one of those a week. So there's always going to be a bit of a balance. Go on, Sean.
I still get excited as a business owner. I still get excited when we get a lead. Even after all these years of plugging away. If I get a lead from Joe Blogs for, I don't know, a development or an area in the Costa del Sol, I get excited. And the reason I get excited is because I think that person has gone onto Google and has specifically searched for something that's valuable to me. So that is, and that is the difference with the meta stuff, isn't it? Meta, you're browsing, you're doing stuff, you're posting stories and reels and God knows what, and you get an advert that looks pretty and you go, ooh, I like a bit of that. So you're not actually proactively going out into the market and searching for it. It kind of hits you. Whereas with a Google ad, someone's got to go to the effort of typing in something like, apartments for sale in Estepona. Why would you do that unless there's a degree of intent? And it might be a false intent. Okay, it might be someone who's just staying there and fancies a nosy around. But if not, there's got to be some intent, whether it's 10%, 100%, whatever. And that to me is exciting. So that's why I've stuck with it.
And when you get that lead in, Sean, what's your qualification process? How do you figure out how serious they are?
We have an autoresponder, so if they fill that in as well, then again, it shows that they've made the effort to answer a few very simple questions. So again, that to me would raise the bar. I think, ooh, okay, this person's told us that, they're coming over in 6 months or whatever. And then it's a race. Then it's okay. I would allocate that lead out to one of our team, and they have a strategy to talk to this client as quickly as possible. But of course, that varies, because some clients like a phone call, some clients don't like a phone call. I hate phone calls. Some clients want an email. Emails are getting boring and long. You can't build rapport on emails. So is it WhatsApp? Is it video? There's a whole range of tools at your disposal, but you don't necessarily know what a client wants in terms of communication channels until you've tried all of them.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. We sort of touched on this earlier, Tom, but if I'm employing you to do my pay-per-click campaign and I trust you to do it, what sort of expectation do you set in an agent's mind about how long it's going to take to see results or have some confidence that something's working?
Yeah, so I think qualifying the agent that's coming in is obviously a big one for us, because they need, we kind of need to communicate to them that although leads can be relatively instant, the actual sale takes time. So and a lot of it falls on their end. So there needs to be a certain amount of commitment, whether it's 6 months, 12 months. And we don't have sort of any annual tie-ins, whatever, with our clients, because we only like to work with people that like to work with us. So we try to go for long term, because at the end of the day, that's when you really get to see the data. Just last week, I had an agent come to me that had sold to a person that has been in their database for 4 years, and that's that data at that time is probably sort of, that isn't measured into it, but having been able to see that over a long period of time is where you get to see some actual proper information. Because a lot of the times, from a lead generation point of view, and from our point of view, we could think that we're doing a good job and giving you 100 leads, whatever it is, a month, but without your feedback saying, well, no, we haven't sold to anyone, or we haven't, these leads aren't good, or they haven't responded, we can't make adjustments to the campaign so they're tailored to each agency. And I think that's an important part of it as well.
It's a similar thing to what you have with portals, isn't it, Martin? As in, you produce a lead, and the only data coming back is they were no good, or they, you don't get the way that they were good, and so you can't optimize. And one of the things that instinctively makes sense to everybody, and is the case, is that you may have, out of 5 leads, one might have cost, for that campaign, might have cost you €100, one might have cost 10, and it might have been the €100 one that bought. But in absence of that information, we can only optimize by lowest cost per lead, more bang for your buck. So we would turn the €100 lead campaign off and put the budget onto the €10 leads, because in absence of any intel coming back to us, one can only optimize for, let's give you as many leads as possible for the money that you have. And quite often that kills the actual overall performance.
Do you know what the interesting thing that we've referred to it a few times is the human element? Because I get it all the time. I run a sales team, and the amount of times they say, "Oh, the leads are crap," the leads are rubbish, and you think, no, they're not. It's probably because you can't reach them. And I've said to them over time, very often, particularly the budgets we're talking about, very often the people you can't get hold of are the clients you want, because they're the ones who are too busy making money that they want to spend with you. So don't try them at 11 o'clock in the morning when they're probably in a board meeting or in a Swiss ski chalet. Go for something that's, try them at the weekend, try them in the evening. But I'm sick of, and they know now not to say it to me. If somebody says to me the leads are rubbish, I'll be like, no, you're rubbish. Because the law of averages says that there's going to be some golden nuggets in there. You've just got to find them, and that's the that's the art and the skill is devoting time to the right ones.
So I think it's important to be able to say that to the agency as well. Obviously, not being rude or just kind of getting them to understand that just because they've added in a fake number or they're not answering, that doesn't mean that they're a bad lead. I mean, we see this. We see, because we deal with several agencies. We see the same person come in, fill in 4 or 5 different forms, and that would indicate high intent. So for one of those, it's going to be a really good lead because it's going to convert into a sale. But for the other 4, it's a bad lead because they didn't manage to convert it. So I think that's important to take into consideration as well.
It's very interesting because we had one telemarketer. When we had a telemarketing department, we don't now because people don't like speaking on the phone. But when we did, he always used to say to me, give me the ones with the dodgy phone numbers or no phone numbers because they're the serious clients. And it was like, again, it was counterintuitive. You think, really? But then when I analyze my own behavior, if I'm looking to buy something and I don't really want to be contacted, but I'm in the market, but I want to be in control of the communication, I will give a false number. And so you kind of think, okay, yeah, I would behave like that. And I'm a serious buyer. So it's quite interesting, isn't it? A lot of people, I'm sure, just write them off, but it doesn't mean you should. The other thing I would say, because obviously we've kind of been a little bit negative about AdWords, Google Ads, and I get why, because it's a tough business and it's a minefield. But the one thing I like about it, after all these years, is that it's a bit like a tap. You can turn it on and off whenever. So if something happened tomorrow, if there was a new pandemic or there was a war in Spain or something like that, and we were gonna have to batten down the hatches, I can just say to Alfredo, just click stop. And that's it. No more spend. I'm not committed to anyone. And that is the beauty of it. Or, if times are hard, I can lower budgets. If I'm feeling a bit more risky, I can say to Alfredo, come on, let's up the game. That I like, is that having that flexibility to at least feel that I've got some control over the process. That, as a business owner, is invaluable.
Yeah, that's really important, isn't it?
Question for you, Martin.
Yeah.
If you listen to us 3 waffle on, how do the problems and challenges that we're describing for Google Ads, what are the parallels that you see with portals?
Yeah, I think we're describing the same set of problems from a different angle. I mean, the biggest problem, I think, with most portal advertising is that all of our business models are you pay for a number of properties. And that sets the expectation with the agent that it's an all-you-can-eat model. And I'm not full up yet, I want more. And then if we're somehow able to deliver more, then the problem is, yeah, but these lead to crap. So it's the same set of issues, just a different monetization mechanism.
I think the reason why it's people like me come across as super negative about it is because it is right for some agents, but it's not right for most agents. And you convert 1% of your leads, or you convert 5% of your leads into sales from Google Ads. That's still a 95% failure rate to be good at it. I mean, there's not much in the world where you're like, you suck 95% of the time. Well done. It's just counterintuitive. Yeah. And so that's why so much emphasis goes in setting expectations. Like Sean says, the numbers still stack up, but you just got to go on understanding what those numbers are. So, we said a $5,000 cost per lead. You're getting $30,000 of commission. Just do this all day of the week. How can we spend more, right? It's really the pain part. It tends to be at that initial stage. That's my experience anyway. So that initial stage where you've taken someone like me's word further, you should talk to someone like Tom, and you're still like sure, and you're kind of worried that you're going to get blamed if it doesn't work, yourself as an agent. So it's that initial stage of like, well, it's been 3 months. You told me to be patient. I've been patient, but I've not really got anything. Should I continue? Should I stop? And that's a very valid situation for an agent to feel. And even one that the supplier, in the case of Tom, or the agent, in the case of Sean, it's just the reality of the situation. It is difficult. And you are going to suck 99 to 95% of the time. And you just got to deal with it,
So
that is incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
Sorry. So I think when we were talking about SEO and portal advertising and now paid advertising, it's more about the mindset, isn't it? And whether these things are being treated strategically or Okay.
Emotionally,
That's
yeah.
catchy.
You got to be unemotional about it, which is easy. Like Tom says, easy to do when it's not your own money, and that's the additional reason
See,
not to do it yourself.
yeah, because the problem is, if I've spent €500,000 in the last 10 years on Google Ads, 475,000 of that is wasted.
You're welcome.
I could buy a house. I could buy two. Thank you. Yes, I could buy a house. I could buy two houses with that. That is insane. Only 25,000 of that 500,000 has gone into clients that bought. So the 475,000 has just gone to Google. And it's like, what have I, that is the nuts of this whole thing, isn't it? That is just crazy. What other business would that happen where, okay, people will say, well, it's marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that, Sean, is how much money in commissions have you made in a decade? You're going to tell us that, but it's more than that, right? Right?
Yeah.
So it works out.
But I would imagine it does. But you've got to, you have. It's fly along on the seat of your pants sometimes. Yeah.
I'm struck again by the sort of parallel with stock market investing, and the mentality is you keep investing, and you don't pull your money out when the market crashes, and you don't try and time the market when it's going up. You just invest. But that's a mindset and a strategic play rather than a opportunistic one.
Yeah, you see, I hate investing in the stock market because, and I think the reason I hate it is because it can go to zero. So I tend to invest, although that money we've made off those few deals, I tend to invest in property because at least I can see it and touch it and feel it. But with the stock market, I'm not a gambling man. I'm really not. But here I am blowing 475 grand on something that has given me no results. Thanks, Alfredo.
Alfredo hinted to your, I think, what you'd call them, sort of in between KPIs. Can you sort of talk us through your funnel, Sean, and how you get your head around spending money up here and measuring that it's flowing in the right direction?
It's very difficult because, as I say, you've got to. It's spreadsheet city. So you've got to analyze where the money's coming from for a start, but where the money's going in terms of the campaigns, the nationalities, the budgets. Are we sinking 80% of our budget into lower end properties with low end commissions? Because then the margins don't stack up. So you've got to find that balance. I totally understand why there's a lot of fairly new entrants into the high end of the market, because since COVID, it's been incredibly busy. We've run out of stock, and average deal volume in that high end of the market has probably been, 5 to 10 million euros. And there's probably been, I'm guessing here, but there's probably been 4, 5, 6 deals a month at that level. So there's been a lot of money to be made. So people have been okay with spending a lot of money to try and get those high end leads. So you've got to weigh up where you are in the market. Are we at that high end? Do we have our own listings? If we don't, then we're sharing commissions. So that affects margin. Are we going to specialize in new developments? But again, that has problems because new developments are not visible. So people generally don't search on them. So it's finding a balance. Alfredo will hopefully back me up on this. It's finding a balance, knowing where you belong in the market and where you're operationally comfortable, and money. How much you're prepared to lose. On the roulette table. And it does come down to, to numbers, and it does come down to just playing the strategy really, and knowing what you want out of it.
You measure how many leads turn to viewings, don't you, Sean? And then how many viewings turn to, so you have those intermediary steps, don't you, that you kind of gives you an indication on a lead source that gives you an indication, okay, how does this compare to what our normal situation is?
So in terms of the the machine and the cogs in the machine, the first one is the lead volume and how much that's costing. The next one is the lead to appointment conversion rate. Then the next one is appointment to sale conversion rate. And then what I do is I just multiply that one by that one to give me an overall lead to sale rate. And then there's the commission value, so the commission percentage. So whenever I'm looking at the state of the business, and obviously I've got historical data to compare it to, I'm always looking at those metrics. So are we falling behind here? And I always look at it like, balancing plates. And there's always one that's wobbling like hell, and you go and fix that one, and then another one's wobbling as well. What I would love is a business where the plates are just spinning and I don't have to worry about them, like the commission rates are good, conversion rate there's good, conversion rate there's good, leads are coming into the business, the average sale volume is this, the average lead volume is that, bingo. And it never happens.
Does that vary a lot between members of the team, or is it fairly static throughout the company?
Yeah. No, that's another problem, because then, you have, and this is where I've stopped looking at sales performance because of the budget level we're dealing with. Our average sale is about €1 million. Because of that, I don't think you can anymore look at monthly performance. I wouldn't get rid of or want to get rid of a member of staff if they'd had a poor month, because people can have poor months and people can also have poor quarters. So I look at it more on a quarterly basis to start with, but then I take it out to a wider level to look at it over the course of a year. And the thing is, because we have 4 or 5 salespeople, if there's one who isn't performing, but the other 4 are, then they can't really use the excuse that the leads are poor, because the way I allocate is very, very fair. I make sure that at the end of each month, everyone's had roughly the same amount of leads and roughly the same lead volume in terms of budget. So if they turn around to me and say, no, the leads are crap, I'll say, well, they were crap for everyone else, but they still managed to convert twice as much as you. And that's where, as a business owner, you do have the ammunition and you do have the data to back up any staffing decisions like that.
Mm. When you're spinning all the plates of your funnel, is there a recurring one that's the most wobbly part of the funnel, or does it just vary?
No, do you know what? Our appointment to conversion rate is very, very good, I think, for the business, for the industry. The one that I'm always trying to improve is the initial one. So it's the lead to appointment. How can we get more of our leads appointed into viewings? And that's really frustrating for me, because I get excited, like I said, when a lead comes in. I think, well, this is a buyer, and they've asked a few more questions, and wow, look at this. I'm going to, it's a Belgian lead. I'm going to give it to our Belgian guy. What could possibly go wrong? Let's get him dealt with. And of course, it's like, oh, nothing's happened. And you look through HubSpot, and you look at the communication, and the guy just hasn't returned calls or anything. So I think it's the hardest part of a salesperson's job, is to identify the leads that are worth chasing, because you can waste an awful lot of time chasing people who might want to talk to you, but they're not necessarily buyers. They might just fancy a natter because no one else is listening to them. So it's really difficult. And again, there's so many nuances in all of that. And it's about communication. It's about giving people what they want, when they want, in the way that they want it. And that's an art form in itself. I've just tried to buy a property in the UK, and all the agents want to do is they want your data, and they want to stick you on a list. I don't know what sort of list. They want to stick you on a list and send you properties. No, I've made an inquiry on Rightmove, and I want to look at that property. I want to buy it. No. You got to fill out this form, and you want to buy it. We've got to come and see it. Like, no, I don't want to see it. I don't need to see it. I know exactly where it is. It's in Bath. It's on North Parade or whatever it is. I want to buy it. Then you can't. And it's like, oh please. And so there's all sorts of in terms of the how it works here. It's yeah, but compared to the UK, it's bliss.
Yeah, well, at least there's enough money in it. There's enough money in commission to make you try hard in Spain, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem in the UK. There's just not enough money in it for them to get out of bed for.
And I think the problem in the UK is there's absolutely no commitment in a deal, sometimes until the day of completion. You can be there with your furniture in the wagon and still no money's being exchanged, which is criminal, really. So I think it encourages dishonesty. And that's the problem I maybe it's just me. That's the problem I found recently. I thought Spain was like the Wild West, but actually I found my experience in the UK recently terrible. Anyway, that's
I agree.
Podcast.
In a more regulated market, you would hope that the regulation would raise the standard of performance. I think it's just defined the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Going back to the lead conversion funnel, over to you, Tom. When you finally get an agent on board and you finally qualified them that they're going to stay for the long haul and spend the right amount of money, what's the what are the obvious errors they tend to make on the landing page? So you're landing the lead, but that's just not converting. What goes wrong there?
So I'd say that the number one problem there is that they dilute the call to action. So a lot of the times where you send them, so that the landing page, whether it's a website, whether it's actually a landing page, often have too many distractions and too many exits. Now, what I mean by this is like I said before, you've just paid for the click, and instead of guiding them onto the next step, the page sends them off to browse menus, read endless text, click listings, or even disappear into like the main website. So I think because you've already paid for that click, you need to kind of guide them. And essentially a landing page, what it does is removes that distraction, removes the distractions you'd find on a website, and tries to focus their attention on the outcome that you want. So you need a clear call to action, minimal navigation, and just most of the times, they consider a lead to be someone that fills out a form, and a form that connects the information that you actually need. So with that, I'm not saying actually just hide everything. Just don't give them 10 different options on where they're landing to sort of fly off.
It's a bit like a sweet shop, isn't it? It's been proven that you walk into a sweet shop, and if there's a choice of 2 jars of sweets, you'll make a decision and pick one. If there's a choice of 10, you'll walk out. It's just too overwhelming. And I think that applies. You've got to edit, and editing is really difficult, particularly when it's your money, because the natural inclination is show as much as you can, because they're bound to pick one. But it doesn't really work like that psychologically.
Yeah. Do agents try and qualify out on the landing page? Are they trying to they're trying to sort of raise the barrier to getting a lead so that they try and improve lead quality? Is that a thing?
Absolutely. So there's been this thing that we've always it started at Voodoo with Alfredo. We call it qualification by friction. So the more hoops you kind of introduce and they have to jump, it tends to provide a better quality lead at the end of it.
But
so you either end up with the ones that persevere or they're just obstinate.
Yeah.
You lose,
exactly. Which is why
Sean Woolley. Sorry, but what happens there? You think, okay, well that's great. I'll have that then. You know what I mean? You'll get agents say, well, I'd rather have fewer leads or better quality. Yes, but what makes, if Sean Woolley doesn't want to leave his phone number, or you don't want to leave your phone number, Martin, does that make you a bad lead? And that's the issue. Is you're leaving money on the table. It's the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going back to sort of portal experience. I often think when somebody who might be interested in buying makes an inquiry, that they're not really saying what stage they're at. They're not really asking the burning question, which I often think is, can I trust you? Are you the right person for me to talk to? Not, I want to buy this property. They're sort of trying to figure out the whole game rather than take my money.
But sometimes they do just want to buy the property, like in Sean's case in the UK.
Yeah.
And that's soul destroying, but they treat people. What I found in the UK is everybody wants to call you. It's can I please view this property? Can I please buy this property? And you get a response from the agent, if you're lucky, saying, when can I call you to discuss your requirements? And like, I've told you my requirements. I want to buy this bloody property. And all they want to do is call you. And I just don't pick up the phone because I don't want to speak to anyone. I don't want to speak to them. I just want to know, can I rent that out, or can I do this, or can I buy this? And it's a very specific question, and they don't answer it because they want to. They're trained to call. And I don't know about everyone else, but I don't really speak to people on the phone anymore. I do a lot of WhatsApp work. I do a lot of WhatsApp voice notes and stuff like that. But I don't get a great phone signal where I live, so I just don't use the phone.
There is a thing that happens
there's
a thing called confirmation bias, which happens with follow-up. We'll talk about that in the next episode, but which is you have agent A, let's call him Tony, just to make one up, that only does email, doesn't believe in phone calls. And then you have agent B, let's call him Steve, who is an ex-car salesperson and doesn't believe in not making the phone call, and all sales makes a phone call. So he only sends emails and doesn't make calls, and all his sales come from emails. Steve makes all his calls through phone calls, so that's what works. And it goes back to the same thing we were just saying. Steve's leaving money on the table for those who don't want, like Sean, that doesn't want to call, and Tony is leaving that money on the table for those who just want to speak to somebody. You see, so there's a lot.
I think the whole lead. I think the whole lead follow-up and qualification process is fascinating because I see it changing on even a month-by-month basis with different communication channels. How because the key is you want that person in front of you, don't you? You want that person on a tour or you want that person in a Zoom. How do you achieve that from a raw inquiry? How do you get to that stage? And that is the holy grail in my business for that plate. So if anyone's got any answers, let me know.
Next week.
Well, and I'm just thinking, we're doing lead follow-up in the final episode of the series, but
that's the key, I think. That is the key. We can have 1,000 leads a month from Tom or Alfredo or whatever, but if you're not following up correctly, it's a waste of time and a waste of money. And there are people who do it really well, and there are people who do it terribly, and you feel like saying to them, "Shut your doors, gone skiing." Do you know what I mean? It's just a waste of time.
Yeah. And like you were saying with the plate spinning metaphor, all the plates have to be spinning. If any plate falls off the stick, that's the black hole.
Yeah, absolutely. So some are like wobbling like hell, and you've just got to try and keep them moving.
Yeah. Well, from your experience, Alfredo, I like Sean's plate spinning metaphor. What's the plate that people should be looking at spinning? Agents should be looking at spinning that they're not even thinking about.
Their follow-up. I call it in the Costa del Sol and in lots of parts of Spain. I call it the 2 and 2. 2 calls, 2 emails, done. Right? And it goes back to what I just said about confirmation. So it's a follow-up. I mean, it's just a follow. It really is. You got to start with: is this lead? This applies to portals, SEO, or Google Ads. Tom, do your customers sell properties on the back of what you do, and whether that be through a reference or just believing him? Yes. Okay. So we established that this works. Once you get past that, same applies to a portal. Do people sell from Kyero or Idealista or whatever? Yes. Okay. Fine. Now the question is it right for me? And can I convert these leads once they arrive? You need to be able to answer that before you even start. And that's where somebody with a bit of experience will say, well, you haven't even got a CRM, you haven't got any kind of follow-up process at all. I can already tell you this is not going to work because you already got one of the plates on the floor before you even started. It's going to fail.
Well, do you know, one of the big things is you often get, and I'm sure you guys do, you often get like one-man bands who've got a bit of money and they want to invest it in Google Ads. And it's great until they realize that, I'm going to be out on appointments with clients. So what happens when that Zagaleta lead for 10 million euros comes in on a Tuesday afternoon at 4 and I'm in viewings? That lead has just gone cold by the time you get home and pick up the phone or email that Zagaleta lead that's cost you 250 euros. So this is where it often doesn't work for very small businesses because the one guy or girl that's running the show can't do everything. And with these leads, you've got to be hot. You've got to be super, super fast.
Mm. Yeah.
But we're probably straying into next week's podcast with that. So
No, it's really fascinating. So I think we're in the sort of the final round now. It sounds like Google Ads has been a real mainstay of your marketing campaign, Sean. Could your business survive just on paid leads from Google?
It probably could, but the only reason I would say that, and the caveat that I would put in there, is that we know what we're doing. And I'm sure we don't know everything. I'm sure there's lots of things we could do better, but we have a fair degree of knowledge and confidence in the system, the metrics, the analysis. I kind of know how to interpret figures. So yes, I think it could survive on that alone. But if I was starting just with that, I'd be concerned.
Yeah, the balls of steel that you've mentioned before. Yeah. You need to go the long haul. Yeah, thank you. And Tom, Alfredo sort of described some of the complexities of the Google Ads interface. Is there a feature in there, or is there a little hidden gem that agents are not aware of or not using?
Yeah, actually there is. I mean, it's quite a good question, and So I'd say the hidden gem is what you call offline conversion tracking. Now, what I mean by this is basically connecting your CRM back to Google Ads. So what most agents do is they judge campaigns on cost per lead and the amount of leads that they're generating. But Google will actually optimize towards whatever you track as a conversion. So, and for most people, that's fine. It's just a form submission. The problem is that the easiest people to get to fill a form aren't always the best buyers. So when you feed back the leads that actually turn into like qualified conversations or viewing booked, Google starts prioritizing traffic that looks like those people. So instead of, then instead of arguing about lead quality, you're literally training the system to produce buyers. Now, the only problem with this is that this can't be done with a new account. It needs to be done with an account like Sean's, with a database like Sean's that has a lot of data in it. But you also need to ensure that you've kept the data that you need for the term report back to Google. So I think that's probably one of the best options that established agencies aren't using and can.
Really cool. Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Alfredo, take us to the end. What words of wisdom can you add to all that?
I would say that if you're expecting to convert more than 5% of the leads you get from Google Ads to sales, it ain't for you.
Wow.
Yeah, I would say that.
And by inference, you have to be comfortable knowing that 95% of your money is wasted. Wasted. Collateral damage.
It's just the cost of doing business. You got to think of it as a cost per sale, not as this click cost me this much and didn't do anything. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like going into a construction place and saying, well, we didn't use those bricks. The house costs you this much.
Yeah, nice. I wanted to add this earlier, but there wasn't a good moment to do it. I'm here with my business group skiing, and there are several online businesses. And I said, what's happening to organic traffic? What's happening to your paid traffic? And they all showed me graphs, excuse me, organic traffic dropping off over the years, just because there's less of it going around. Google's either answering the question with Gemini, or it's a paid click. The amount of organic clicks has been declining steadily. And no great surprise, as the organic traffic has dipped, the cost of paid is almost the exact mirror opposite. And it's happening in every industry, not just real estate.
Right.
So something's going on. I think it's not clear yet what the role of LLMs will be and how do we get traffic from that, if at all. It's as Kevin said last week, it's more of a black art than SEO. But what we've got right now is organic and paid, and they work to an extent, but none of them are magic.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with, you just mentioned LLMs and how AI and, ChatGPT introducing ads, how that is all going to affect, sort of the next step of advertising.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's been a really interesting episode. I've learned a lot, and I hope agents listening to this will have too. Next week, we'll be looking at the other plate spinning of lead follow-up and tying all this together.